beautiful people. It's really nice to slow down with you and watch these trees sway in the wind. Nature just has its own progression that seems effortless in the changing seasons. I think that's one area in which we could learn a lot from nature. These trees don't fear losing their leaves and becoming completely bare. They don't doubt that they'll grow again and be renewed again. They don't doubt that they'll still stand. How crazy is it that we do? Today I was thinking a lot about fear and how we've grown quite comfortable believing in our fears and living our life through them. Today more than ever, we're comfortable. And part of that is due to the blessing of the safety that our families and the people who have come before us have worked so hard to provide and accomplish for society. And because we have that safety, because our reality isn't constantly threatened, at least for most of us, if not many of us, we then create a false kind of fear, a fake fear, a fear that isn't real, isn't any real threat of danger, but it feels like it is. And maybe that fear can be that you're afraid to make videos like me, or you're afraid to put yourself out there like me, or you're afraid to show up without your appearance perfect like me. And then one way or another, you learn that you're not getting where you want to be in life, that you're not becoming who you want to be, the person that you know you can be, and that your goals and your dreams and your best life have yet to be lived. And if you're like me, maybe you've waited a long time. But I really hope, and my goal in sharing this message is that you don't. I waited a decade of my life to put myself out there on camera, to be seen, because I kept telling myself that tomorrow I would be more put together, and I would have my hair done and my makeup done, and I would look better. And then tomorrow turned into tomorrow, and that turned into tomorrow, and that turned into 10 years. Just like that. Literally. Just like that. From tomorrow to 10 years. Because when we don't do something for the right reasons, or we find excuses that are not the right reasons and that are not worth putting that thing off for, we don't actually get the thing done. And the worst part about that is the trust that you break with yourself, or maybe that you never get to develop. But certainly something breaks there, because you tell yourself, or you plan, or you think, you have the thought that you will do this thing. And then day after day after day passes and you don't do it. So what happens to your self-trust? You don't build it. And what happens in place of the original idea that you had is the same idea. Not much changes in its place. It kind of stays stagnant in your mind, like a recurring thought. But you know what does change, and what is added to that is the neuroses in your mind, which is the unhealthy mental activity revolving around the excuses that you gave yourself as to why you didn't do that thing. So it's the original thought of doing that thing, the reminder, right, that I was going to do it today. And then there is the thought that comes after the day is over, and maybe you're laying in bed and you realize that you have the thought, I didn't do that thing that I was supposed to today. And then there's the additional mental activity of the excuses that you gave, the reasons that you may not have done it, which then transform into different stories and then become complex in the sense that they involve other people, where you sort of have this relationship of judgment, not just for yourself, but then it involves other people. Your judgment of yourself is then reflected upon other people, and somehow the faces of other people tie into the things you never did for yourself. And then soon you start to scroll on social media or just meet people and then have thoughts about them later on, where, or while you are in their presence, but usually later, I would think, because in presence, in the presence of somebody, usually we are pure connection. But in your lone moments, your mind starts to play that record player of excuses, stories, judgment of yourself, which now can possibly involve judgment of other people that have nothing to do with you, or no relation to the thing that you think that they judge you for. And then it's quite possible, right? And then you have the judgment of other people, but then you also have the fear that builds and builds. And this fear that, when you allow to grow within you, compounds itself. And because you allow it to go on, because you don't take the action which will suppress the fear, or which will diminish it, because you don't take action, this fear then grows day after day after day until you take action. So the fear grows and then becomes something that, because you have allowed it to be the decision maker in your life, it then grows almost bigger than you, because you allow it to. You have allowed it to, and you continue to allow it to. So what happens is that your perception of reality becomes distorted. That a fear which started as not that great or not that significant has grown overwhelming for you, grows in its intensity for you. So what can we do? Well, we've got to love ourselves a whole lot to try and, as best we can, nip that fear in the bud. As soon as we see that fear, what's the first action that we can take right now? If you have a phobia of something, what's an action or a small step that you can take in the near future? Can you expose yourself to the thing that you are afraid of? Can you do it slowly? Can you do it bit by bit? But can you do it? Are you willing to? Because your greatest life, and very often your greatest strength, is on the other side of that thing that you fear. Very often, our fear is a guide. It's guiding us to the area in our life that, when we develop, often becomes our greatest strength, our greatest work, and our greatest contribution to humanity. It's almost like that fear was put there to direct our attention to it. Now, there's a very real kind of fear. And this fear, this real fear, I call it real fear because it is an actual threat of harm to us. And we can go deeper into that later. But how do you identify a fake fear versus a real fear? And a fake fear being a perceived threat of danger where there isn't actually any, versus a real fear that we would be glad and truly be safe if we avoided that thing, or if we were vigilant in that situation, if we were attentive in that situation. And a real common example of this is when we cross the street. That's a very real threat and a very good time to heighten your senses, right? If you're just casually walking on the sidewalk and you're looking at your phone and you come to a curb, you will often see people look up. That's a when you get to that curb, you need to look up. That's a good time to put your phone in your pocket and to automatically heighten all of your senses to now look around. And you may find that when you look around, maybe the last time that you did was a few minutes ago and things looked very different. And now you are at the curb and at the curb of this street, and you now are paying attention to your surroundings. And there's so many benefits of that, right? But the greatest one and the most important one is just the reality of crossing the street and the safety that is so very necessary in that situation to give yourself. So how do you differentiate between a fake fear and a real fear? You imagine yourself on your deathbed and how you would feel looking back on your life if you pursued the fear. So if it was a real fear, how would you know? Well, you think about how you would feel about it on your deathbed. Maybe, and I would think that you'd be glad that you looked up when you were crossing the street. Unless it's some situation that caused you to meet somebody, but even then you never wish for that. You always want to be aware. You always want to be vigilant of your surroundings, especially when they are changing. So, will you be grateful for listening to your fear in that moment that was trying to protect you from the cars coming? Yes. Yes. Will you be grateful on your deathbed for not making that YouTube video or not pursuing your dream career or not being a musician or learning an instrument or learning a language or writing a book or having kids if that's what you wanted, or telling somebody you love them, living your life the way that seemed fit to you, that seemed suitable and best suitable for you? Will you have been grateful for these things or any of these on your deathbed? Or will you have regret? We are alive to live and to avoid regret. That is an emotion that nobody wants to feel. And perhaps that there is no other emotion that is more useless. I guess its only use throughout life is to learn not to make that same mistake again. But regret on your deathbed is a waste, because there is absolutely nothing that you can do about it then. So we live our whole life in an attempt to avoid even the slightest bit of regret on our deathbed. And that means we make ourselves uncomfortable now. We do what we need to do today. We take the next step today. We work on that project today. We do what we said we were going to do today. We follow our heart today. We tell somebody we love them today. We tell the truth today, 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 today. Because tomorrow doesn't exist yet and might not. That's just the reality of life. And you don't want to test that. That sounds like a really stupid way to live. And a great way not to live. By waiting for tomorrow. Sometimes when I wait for something now or I put something off, I ask God, please make sure that I have tomorrow. I'm going to do this tomorrow, but please make sure that I wake up tomorrow. Because there's some good reason that I didn't do it today. And my heart's intention is to truly do it as soon as I can. And maybe that reason is because I know I need to go to sleep, or something else that relates to caring for my body. And so because of that, I will sometimes put something off. But other times, when it's for a reason that isn't good enough, like, I don't want to get dirty right now. I don't want to film that or put on that dress or do those things because it means that I'll have to shower again after. And I don't really feel like doing that. Or I don't want to touch something, or I don't want to hug somebody. And these are in relation to OCD. I think to myself, gosh, if I even have that thought on my deathbed, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do if I'm laying there and I think to myself that I didn't hug my brother because I was clean and he was dirty. I guess just saying this out loud and thinking about this tells me that I need to do something different there. And maybe I can just start with small steps. I think when we ask ourselves this question, what is truly important in life? And if I can answer that, it's by imagining how I will feel and what I will think about my life on my deathbed. And notice I don't say at the end of my life. And what is the end? The end could be 70 or 90 or 40 or tomorrow or tonight. The end could be the next moment. So it doesn't really benefit you to think about your life at the end of your life. It benefits you to think about your life at the end of each day. I would think that that's a more effective way to minimize your regret at the end of your life, whenever that is. Bronnie Ware worked with the terminally ill, and the most common regret that they had was that they wished they had lived a life that was more true to themselves. And what is truth? What is your truth? Because that is the only thing. That reason right there is the reason to overcome all and any of your fears. Everything is the reason to not feel that way at the end of your life. And sometimes that requires hard work and processing, even in just knowing who our true self, what our true self is, what our true self wants. How do you know? Often we've been so heavily conditioned by the very people that mean well for us that we don't know the difference between our true self and our day-to-day self. Who's who? They all just feel like the same person to me. I know they did to me for much of my life. For all of my life so far, with the exception of the last few years. But I hope that you wake up into your true self, and my prayer for you is the same that it is for me. It's more and more clarity of my truth, because my truth is the reason that I'm here. And maybe somewhere along the line it got stomped out a little bit or a lot, but it's never completely gone. We are never, ever without our truth, without our individual truth. So at any given moment, if you want to start living your best self, you have to look inside. If you want to know yourself, you've got to look inside. You've got to have the courage to delve into you and find out who you are, what you like, what you don't like. And then perhaps with the courage and with that intention of getting to know yourself, the conditioning falls away. And that may be a process, a very long process, or it might not be. But it may require some effort on your part, intention, courage, and then the conscious effort of making time for yourself and really sitting with yourself and thinking about who you are. Because the worst part of the most common regret that Bronnie Ware found, that we wish that we had the courage to live a life that was more true to ourselves, is that we are the only one who can live our life. I'm the only one that can live the life that I was meant to live. You are the only one that can live the life that was meant for you. And the next person, the same for them, and so on and so forth. So if you don't live the only life that was meant for you, then that life, your life, or what was supposed to be your life, is completely lost. It's completely lost in time. Because you abandoned it. And life is really, really beautiful and remarkable in the sense that it gives us so many experiences over the course of our life so that we can choose ourselves, so that we can find ourselves, respect ourselves, love ourselves, honor ourselves, and be our truth. Live that out loud. But often we don't listen, or there's so much noise that it's drowned out. But life is always trying to give you experiences to help you and bring you closer to this truth within you, the truth that you are, the truth that I am, the truth that we all are. And what's interesting is that when you discover and know this truth that you are, you also know the truth that I am, and everybody else, every other human being and creation is. Because once you discover your individual truth, you discover the universal one. We are all just walking each other home. And this lifetime is so that we can break out of the fear, the patterns of fear that we unconsciously live. Some of us for longer than others, and in different ways, in different areas of our life. We all have different fears, and also similar ones. We're not as different as we think. So open a book, listen to a podcast, hear a story, and you'll know that you're not alone in your fear, that it's a part of all of our human experiences. And it's a part of life, it's a part of being human. And perhaps we are never without it. But it serves its purpose. And without it, I don't know if we could achieve greatness. I don't know if we would have anything to transcend. What would this life be about if there wasn't any contrast? How would we experience love? How would we experience our preference? How would we experience all the things that we enjoy? How would we even enjoy without the contrast? How would there be joy without sadness? So the fear is irreplaceable. It has a very specific purpose in our human existence. And its contrast is necessary and very often useful, because when we listen, or rather when we even just look at where the fear is pointing, we know the direction that we are being asked to move towards. And if we don't move in that direction, that fear grows. That monster just becomes bigger. And you don't want it to get out of control. a baby monster is definitely easier to fight off than a mommy or a daddy monster or a big adult monster or a monster triple its size or quadruple or many, 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 many times its size. You'd rather have a smaller monster. Sometimes that smaller monster will pop up. Just know what you need to do in order for that little baby to go away. You just need to take the first step. And then she'll stop intruding. But if you listen to her, she'll just sit there growing. And you don't want her to gain more and more control. Because that means that you'll have less and less. But even so, if you remember that it's you versus you, you always have the control at any moment in your life, even if your fear has grown to colossal size. You still have the control. The power is always in your hands, in your mind. And no matter how great your fear, you can always overcome it. No matter how crippling it is for you, how bad, how terrifying it seems for you. No matter your experience and your feeling, your intensity, still, there is no fear that you cannot overcome. You are greater than every fear that could ever possess you. You just gotta remember that you possess it. It doesn't inhabit you. You have chosen to inhabit it. And now you choose not to. You can choose not to. It's just fear. The only thing that is greater than it is already within you. I love you, my friends. Don't fall victim to fear, to staying in fear, to living in fear. Experience it, feel it, and do the thing that you're afraid of anyway. We're here exactly for that reason, both to experience fear and then the second part, which is to do the thing anyway. That first part is the human experience. The second one, you don't have to do, but if you do, you will transcend the human experience. And at the end of your life, whether that's down the line or tomorrow, literally, when you're on your deathbed, you'll be thankful that you leaned in towards your fake fear, that you did the things that were uncomfortable, that you chose the discomfort for the peace that you would feel in that moment. Go do the thing that you're afraid of doing. I love you, my friends. Beat fear. You are the thing that is greater than it. The truth and the love are already within you. They are your very essence. I'll see you.